tell, do you see the road? I'm out to my soul into the size whenever the smoke clear out of my face and my picture perfect.
Hello and welcome back, fellow anime lovers, to Cypherfics. I am delighted to have you join us once again in the world of fanfiction and fantasy. This is the fourth part of, What If Harry Potter Meets High School DxD. Special note, this fanfic is written and a masterpiece of Asian Lion Heart 310 on FANFICTIONnet. Do check and support the author too. Now smash the like, share and subscribe button for more. Also press the bell icon so that you never miss such great parts. Thanks for the introduction. Now let's dive into the world. A few days had passed since Harry told his story to the Occult Research Club and the Student Council, and life had indeed turned to the better for him. They would sometimes come to visit him, especially Akeno and Kaneko. The former because she wanted to know who she will have to share Harry, and the latter just to be around her Atoko. Rias and Sona would often step by, but not only to visit him but more like reading the large amount of books in the mansion library. Harry didn't mind it and instead, wholeheartedly let them take some books. At the conditions of bringing them back once they finished. Issei also would sometimes stop by to visit Asia, who decided to leave in the mansion as there were a lot of rooms. The brown-haired perv, ever since he was first introduced as a devil, trained hard to use his sacred gear and developed some muscles, albeit not as big as Harry's. In addition, he had to do some missions, but it was discovered that he couldn't use the Gremory portal, so he used a bike. A devil on a bike. What will be next? A flying goat? Speaking of the nun, Harry grew attached to the innocent blonde girl so much that he saw her as a little sister, and it seemed that the feeling was mutual because she started to call him Oniai-san. The house elves also grew fond of the nun, and Harry would sometimes find them chatting with her. His friendship with Kiba got stronger after the latter revealed to him some part of his life. Why? Because Harry revealed his, the blonde guy thought it was fair for him to know, as they were friends. Apparently, Kiba was the last survivor of some project, the Holy Sword Project, led by a certain Valper or something. The project proved to be a failure, which apparently led the man to eliminate all his subjects, Kiba and his friends/comrades. This event caused the blonde to grow hateful toward the Holy Sword, especially Excalibur. Harry, who had been horrified by the story, promised his blonde friend to be there for him, and Kiba thanked him wholeheartedly. Kaneko herself opened up to her. Yatoko, her sister, Kuroka, had killed her king and his peerage in madness and was now on the run. Her action caused the devils to exterminate a village of Nikomadas, and Kaneko only survived thanks to Rias's brother, who gave her to his sister. Akeno became even more determined to stalk him, as she was the member of the Occult Research Club. He saw the most a part of Kaneko and Issei. The raven-haired beauty tried to get him to tell her who was his girlfriend so she could talk to her, but each time, she was kindly turned denied, which only seemed to make her determination grow. Speaking of girlfriend, Ophis would usually come at night when no one beside Harry was in the mansion. Their relationship grew as the time passed, and the raven-haired boy twice took her to a local restaurant for a date. The infinite dragon seemed to be a complete different person around him, but he didn't complain as she looked even more appealing. When they were in a room, the two did nothing more than kisses and caresses, but Ophis seemed to want more. Harry, however, didn't felt ready, so of course, he turned her down as politely as he could. The infinite dragon, while frustrated at being denied, had accepted to wait until he felt ready. She had been surprised to meet Rainier at Harry's home, and after a lot of explanation, she calmed down. Speaking of Rainier, she grew accustomed of her life in the mansion, and she felt happier that she had ever been sickly the day she got kicked out of heaven. She became, albeit unofficially, Asia's protector, as she still felt guilty of what she did. Later, she was shocked to the core when she met Ophis, and it worsened when it was revealed that the infinite dragon herself was Harry's girlfriend. Internally she had been a bit angry because, during the time she passed in this mansion, she fell in love with the young lord and wanted nothing more than to shag him in bed. But then, her dream crushed when Ophis revealed herself to not only be Harry's girlfriend but also his mate. However, the infinite dragon secretly assured her that she wouldn't mind sharing him, and the two of them became good friends afterwards. Harry, while surprised by their complicity, was unaware of what was already in motion for him, for the better or not. However, he did notice Rainier's new behavior around him. She acted more like Akeno but not as much. During the time she passed here, Harry got to know the fallen angel a little better and grew to like her, as under the mask of coldness, she was rather interesting woman, fierce and loyal. He would be lying to himself if he said he didn't found her attractive, but he felt that he would be cheating on Ophis and so refrained himself. He, however, released the block he placed on her, so now she was free to use her powers, but not once did she attempt to use them. Muerte had come by 2 of 3 times since the day she introduced herself to the devils and fallen angel, and it was usually to see if her nephew in all but BLD was still fine and well. He could swore that he had seen her looking at him with a bit of disappointment when they ate together. Why? He didn't know. But then he noticed the grin she had, albeit it was barely noticeable each time her eyes landed on him and Rainier, and internally shivered at the last time he saw those eyes. He passed some sort of trials a few days ago, and Muerte stated that he didn't needed more lessons from her as he now knew everything she know. As she announced this, he had detected the sadness and nostalgia in her tone and so, gently told her that he would always need her, and she brightened a lot at this. Back to present, he was sitting on a couch facing Rias and the rest of her peerage. He didn't went to school today because he had worked late the other night and because he wanted to relax for once. On what was he working on, you might ask? On some potions. Yes, you heard me right, potions. But what for? Easy for special cases like healing injuries, trouble to sleep, etc. The other reason because he didn't want to go to school. Because Rainier, the house elves and Muerte said he should take a day off. So he inquired Asia to take notes for him in class, and she wholeheartedly accepted. The blonde nun attracted the attention of a lot of people the first day she came at school, and Harry had been amused at the look everyone gave Issei when the nun had been placed near him. Let me get this straight, you want me and no devil to come with you all to pick up a familiar? Harry asked them with a raised brow as he drank a bit of tea, given to him by Rainier. Asia had came back home a few minutes ago with the entire members of the Occult Research Club and had told him what happened during his absence. Apparently, Sona recruited a guy named Saji in her peerage and wanted to go get him a familiar, but sadly Rias had planned the same to Issei and Asia. He had asked them why they couldn't simply go all together, and Akeno responded by stating that only one group was allowed to enter the world of familiar. So to see who will go there, the 2 parties competed with each other. Harry deadpanned at Rias when Issei retailed him the tennis match, which started normal to became frightful. It ended him with the 2 destroying most of the equipment's a draw. So to decide who will get familiars, the 2 parties chose to face each other in a dodgeball match, which ended up with the victory of Rias and her peerage. However, before leaving, Sona had inquired the redhead if Harry should get a familiar as well, despite him not being a devil. Rias, apparently, went deep in thought and agreed with her fellow heiress before taking both her and her peerage to see Harry, while Sona and her peerage returned back to school for other stuffs. The Occult Research Club entered Harry's domain and were greeted by the landlord Harry himself, who led them inside. That's bring us back to present. Yes. You might not a devil, but we all think you deserved it, Rias answered with a soft smile as around her peerage nodded their heads in agreement. Harry drank a bit more of his tea before looking back at the group in front of him. Well then, I'm sorry to disappoint you, but I won't go with you. The devils looked like a bombshell had been dropped on them, and Rias was about to ask him why he didn't want it to come when Issei beat her to it. What the heck, man? Why wouldn't you want to come? Because I already have a familiar. New wave of shock from the devils, while Rainier, who was sitting not too far away and reading a book, internally smirked. The fallen angel met Harry's familiar 2 days after her first night in the mansion, and she had been shocked by amazed that the green-eyed boy had such a powerful creature as his familiar. Hedwig, for her part, had first been distrustful of her, but then slowly grew fond of the fallen angel after Rainier gave her a piece of bacon. That's it. What do you mean you have a familiar? Issei asked him with disbelief. It's mean what I said. Why would I want to go with you to get a familiar if I already have one? Then where is it? Kiba asked him with a raised brow as he crossed his arms. I'm ready to bet it's a powerful creature, fufufu, Akeno cooed with her usual eye-closed smile. Harry sent her an amused smirk and a raised brow, as it was indeed the case, before opening his mouth to call out. Hedwig. Suddenly, in a burst of white flame, appeared the white royal phoenix in all her glory. The sudden apparition caused the devils to freeze in amazement and fear, as phoenixes were known to be light creatures. The majestic bird flied around the group, singing loudly, and Harry listened to it with a smile while the devils were shivering in fear. Why? Because a phoenix's song struck fear in creatures of evil like devils and fallen angel. However, Rainier didn't seem particularly affected by the song and instead enjoyed it, as it was smoothing and almost sounded like symphony. The white phoenix circled the group for a moment or two before landing on a perch-like object standing near Harry's chair. The noble bird ruffled her feature before extending her neck to nuzzle the top of Harry's head. In response, the green-eyed boy reached out to caress her snowy feathers. Everyone, let me introduce you to my familiar, Hedwig, the royal phoenix. Hedwig, at those words, spread her wings to show herself in all her glory while singing again, but this time it didn't hurt the devils much, to their relief, and the fear was now replaced with amazement. Before someone could say something, Asia stepped closer to the bird with a piece of bacon in her hands. Seeing it, the phoenix's eyes seemed to sparkle, and Asia wholeheartedly gave it to her. Hedwig quickly ate the piece of bacon before ruffling the top of the nun's head with her beak, earning a giggle from Say Nun. Asia met the bird at the same time that Rainier, and like the house elves, she attracted Hedwig's attention, maybe because of how pure and innocent she was. "You how?" Rias mumbled in shock as her eyes were still locked on the magnificent bird, who was far too busy being complimented by Asia to pay attention to the redhead. A magician never reveal his secret, milady. Rias shot him a glare while everyone else laughed with humor, with Harry giving her an innocent smile in response. Akeno's interest in Harry grew a bit bigger with this new discovery and couldn't help but lick her lips in anticipation as she was daydreaming about him and her together, along with whoever his girlfriend was. "Oh man, you are really lucky, you know that. First you are a lord, trained by death herself, have a girlfriend and a freaking phoenix as your familiar. Life is so unfair." Issei whined with despair. Harry stared at him with a smirk, but then noticed the way Akeno was looking at him, lust. Shivering, he used all of his occlumency abilities to make sure to not show how nervous this simple look was causing him. "So is there something else you want to discuss?" he asked in an attempt to change the subject. Rainier shot him an amused raised brow as she had noticed the look Rias's queen was sending him, and was internally feeling jealous, as Akeno was indeed an appealing woman. But maybe Ophis wouldn't mind another one. A grin grew on the fallen angel's face as she stared at the green-eyed boy, who was unaware of what was waiting for him. "Honestly no, so we will come back later." "Alright then, good luck in Kaneko-chan." "Huh. You know what to do if Issei starts to misbehave." Hearing this, the brown-haired boy in question flinched when a small grin appeared on Kaneko's face and gulped in fright when the petite white-haired girl nodded at her. "Itoko." "Asia." Issei quickly called out for the nun as Rias went back on her feet alongside Akeno. "Coming." The blonde nun replied with her happy smile as she petted Hedwig's head one last time before approaching the perv. Harry watched as Rias and her peerage disappeared through the familiar red summoning circle and sighed once they left. The black-haired teen then turned around to face Hedwig, who seemed sad that Asia left. He could understand it, but it was still funny at the same time. "You really loves being spoiled rotten, huh, you big featherball?" The royal phoenix screeched at him in indignation before using one of her wings to slap the back of his head, much to the amusement of a certain fallen angel who snickered under her hand. "Ow. Okay, I take back what I said, but I still think it." Another slap from Hedwig followed his words. "Ow." Satisfied with her work, Hedwig sung with amusement before disappearing in a burst of flame. Harry glared toward where she disappeared while rubbing the back of his head with a hand. "Bloody bird is gonna be the death of me one of these days," he grumbled under his breath before glaring at Rainier, who tried to pull out an innocent face which failed. Yeah, laugh it off." Harry inquired her with exasperation as he walked out of the library room to his bedroom to rest for a bit. Just as he entered his room, a portal opened outside his mansion and Ophis, the infinite dragon, herself stepped out. What was she doing here? Well, to see her mate, what else? Before she could enter the mansion, she was instantly greeted by one of the house elves, Mickey. Welcome to Peveril Mansion, Mstrs Ophis. Are you looking for Mstr Harry? I am. Tell him I'm here. Yes, Mstrs. Mickey replied quickly before disappearing with a pop. Ophis then approached the mansion before entering inside. As she walked in the hall, she passed near the library room where she was instantly spotted by none other than Rainier. Lady Ophis, the fallen angel, called out in surprise before bowing in front of the dragon god. The infinite dragon stopped dead in her tracks when her name was called and turned her head to see the bowing fallen angel. Fallen angel, where is Harry-kun? Rainier slowly went back on her feet, but still not daring to look at the powerful being in front of her in the eyes, knowing that she could easily be destroyed. I think he is in his room. Ophis nodded at her before resuming her walk, totally ignoring Rainier. Curious, the fallen angel followed her while trying to maintain as much distance as possible between her and the infinite dragon. Ophis, however, didn't care that she was being followed, as she was more focused on finding her mate. She followed his scent toward a room far away from the one she encountered Rainier and was about to open the door when Mickey appeared in front of her, stopping her. I'm sorry, but Mstr Harry is sleeping, you cannot enter. Ophis stared at the house elf with a straight face, and Mickey was growing nervous under the stare and flinched in fear when the infinite dragon released a small hint of her aura. Rainier flinched at how powerful it was, despite it not being fully charged, and couldn't help but shiver at the thought of an angry Ophis. Can't I? Will you stop me then? Mickey rapidly shook his head as he stared at the dragon god with fear in his eyes. Then out of my way. The house elf quickly nodded before disappearing as fast as he came. Rainier looked at Ophis with nervousness, but the powerful being ignored her to open the room's front doors, revealing the sleeping form of Harry laying on his bed. Rainier blushed as she noticed that the top of his body was shirtless and licked her lips as she stared at his muscled chest. But then, Ophis moved toward the bed before climbing on it. Rainier watched with wide eyes as the infinite dragon made herself comfortable on the bed while wrapping her mate in her arms, pulling him closer to her. Harry groaned as he felt something touching him and cracked an eye open to look at what was touching, only to gap in surprise when he saw the smiling face of Ophis. Not only that, but Rainier was also present and her eyes were staring at his chest, blushing madly. He tried to cover himself but was stopped by Ophis, who firmly placed a hand on his chest before forcing him to lay down. Hello there, Harry-kun. Ophis? What are you doing here? Oh. Are you unhappy to see me? No. I mean, it's good to see you, but I didn't know you will come. Ophis smiled at him fondly before positioning herself so she was on top of him. Harry blushed when he realized her current position, but before he could say something, the infinite dragon kissed him on the lips. Rainier blushed instantly at the sight but couldn't help but getting aroused as she wanted to join in. Harry, unaware of Rainier's current dilemma, was kissing his girlfriend back before Ophis pulled herself out after a moment like this, probably to catch her breath. However, to his shock, she started to undress herself. Wait, what? And Harry couldn't retain himself from staring at her body. While she didn't have a large busts or assets like Rias or Akeno, Ophis had a slim and tender body which was really attractive. Ophis, what are you? I cannot wait any longer. I want you. Now. Harry bitten his lips at those words and tried to think of an excuse when he remembered that Rainier was still present. Ophis. We aren't alone, remember? The infinite dragon, who was now completely NDE, stopped in her actions to look at Rainier, who froze when she saw Ophis's eyes looking at her before looking back at Harry to say something that shocked the both of them. She can join us if she wants, I don't care. Harry blinked in shock as he stared at his girlfriend, who only smiled at him as she used her right hand to gesture the fallen angel to come over. Rainier, seeing this, quickly get rid of her surprised face to turn it into a pleasant one as she approached the bed before climbing it at the other side of Harry. The green-eyed teen stared at the fallen angel with shock when Rainier kissed him on the lips under the amused eyes of Ophis, who was watching the scene with a grin. Unable to comprehend what was going on, Harry sadly didn't return the kiss as he was still frozen in shock. For a few seconds, the two of them stayed like this until Rainier pulled herself away before winking at him seductively. "I have wanted to do this for a moment now," the fallen angel inquired as she rubbed his right cheek with a hand. "But it's wrong, I already have a girl for Dash," Harry began to say before Ophis interrupted him by saying something that surprised and shocked him. "Muerte didn't tell you? It is common for a male to have multiple girlfriends, especially in the supernatural world." Harry stared blankly at the infinite dragon before cursing in anger and annoyance under his breath. "DMNUant mu." Elsewhere, Muerte sneezed, "Someone must be talking about me again." Back to Peveril Mansion, both Ophis and Rainier were cuddling Harry, who was still processing what he was hearing. "And you are fine with me being with other girls?" he asked the infinite dragon tentatively but also nervously. "Of course, as long as I am the head of your little HRM, Harry Cohen," Ophis replied back before kissing him fiercely on the lips. The green-eyed teen instantly kissed her back, their bare chest pressed against one another while Rainier was watching them, waiting for her turn. However, she quickly noticed something that caught her attention and caused her to lick her lips with anticipation. My, look like someone down there is excited." Hearing this, Harry and Ophis stopped their kissing session to look at what Rainier was seeing, only for the former to blush madly in embarrassment when he realized that both girls were staring at his PP, or more precisely at the large and noticeable bulge there. "Well, I can explain." "Shh, don't be so embarrassed for that, Harry Cohen," Ophis inquired as she stared at her mate with lustful eyes as she firmly pinned him down on his back with her standing above him. "And let us show you how much we love you," Rainier inquired as she pulled his lowers away from him, revealing his throbbing PP to them. "My! Look at how big it is. You must really want us to get this big." Harry blushed even redder at the teasing, but then gasped in shock when he felt fingers wrapping around his PP, but was unable to look up because the only thing he could see was a naked Ophis sitting on him with a lustful glint in her eyes. Harry opened his mouth to see something when a finger on his lips stopped him from doing so, courtesy of Ophis. "Let the fun begin." Just as those words escaped Ophis's mouth, she kissed him again fiercely while using her hands to move his own hands toward her melons. Harry at the kiss as he massaged his mate's tips when he suddenly felt them growing a bit. Opening his eyes, he was shocked to see that they were now as big as Rainier's. Looking at his mate questioningly, the infinite dragon only smiled at him before saying lustily, "I'm a shapeshifter, I can do whatever I want with my body, now let's make things a little more interesting, shall we?" Harry saw Ophis looking at Rainier as she said those words, and the fallen angel, who was stroking his PP, smirked before stuffing it completely inside her mouth, going, "All it." The green-eyed boy when he felt Rainier's tongue caressing his or liking the tip, but then Ophis kissed him again on the lips, forcing him to be focused on her. Suddenly Harry pulled himself away from Ophis's mouth to eaten on one of her tips. At first taken aback by the sudden action, the infinite dragon in pure bliss before gasping when she felt a pair of hands grabbing her peach. Then the same hand started to massage her peach, which caused Ophis to squeal. Meanwhile Rainier was liking Harry's throbbing PP with passion, he was so big. It must be 6 inches in size. The fallen angel then gave him a HNDJB while tickling his urethra with her tongue. Harry's were muffled as he was still doing Ophis's tips, but then pulled himself when he felt himself getting close to leak. Rainier, noticing his expression, doubled her actions, liking and kissing his PP faster. Thanks to this, it didn't take long for Harry to release his juices right inside Rainier's mouth. Indeed, as if she knew when it will leak out, she engulfed his PP in her mouth and greedily took his juices before eating it. "Tasty," the fallen angel commented as she eyed the green-eyed teen. But then she climbed on the bed, looking at Harry like a pouncing predator, and he suddenly knew that it was far from over. Ophis smirked when she saw how hard her mate's PP was, despite having released his juices, and she grabbed it firmly with her left hand before stroking it slowly. Harry again at the movements, but then froze when he saw something standing above his head. His eyes widened at the sight of Rainier's womanhood in all its glory. The fallen angel was looking down at him with nothing but lust as she wriggled her waist a bit, silently giggling when she saw Harry's eyes following her PP's movements. He was about to ask her what she was about to do when his moth was suddenly pressed against her womanhood, preventing him from asking. As if it wasn't enough, he felt a hand pushing him deeper against her wet pee-pee but still could hear her something. "Lick my pee-pee. I want to feel that tongue of yours." Harry didn't have a choice but to do what he was told, especially when Rainier's hand pushed him forcefully deeper against her womanhood. The moment he started to lick her pink wall, Rainier gasped in joy and lustily as she used her other hand to rub her CLT. Ophis, for her part, had been liking her mate's pee-pee the moment Rainier sat on him. But now, she wanted more. She wanted to feel him inside her. However, she didn't want it to get PRGN, and so there was only one other option, her peach. Smirking lustily at what she had in mind, she instantly looked back at Rainier, who was experimenting the best CNLNGS of her life. "Fallen angel, get off him now." Hearing how cold and authoritative it was, Rainier pulled herself away from Harry, a bit disappointed to not gotten the chance to release her juices all over his handsome face. Harry slowly went up, and what he saw once he was on his haunches caused him to gap. Ophis was on all four with her peach presented to him. The infinite dragon had made to change the size of her peach to make them more attractive to her mate, and she smirked in triumph when she saw that it succeeded. "Come on, Harry-kun, I heard it's rude for a man to keep a woman waiting." Harry, hearing this, blinked out of his trance before positioning himself behind Ophis. The green-eyed teen aimed his pee-pee as her pee-pee when she stopped him by saying, "No, no, no, another opening needs your attention." He instantly knew what she meant and aimed his pee-pee at her peach hole before slowly pushing it inside. As his pee-pee went in, Ophis was in delight, but once he was fully inside, she screamed in pain. "Are you okay?" he asked her with concern, and Ophis turned her head slightly to answer. "I'm fine, it's my first time, that's all, keep going." "Are you sure?" "Yes. I want you inside me." "As my lady wish," he replied mischievously to her cry as he started to move in and out inside her peach. Her cries of pain turned into lustful ones as she kept telling him to keep going. Rainier, who was feeling a bit left out, instantly approached Harry before pulling him into a fierce and passionate kiss which caused the two of them to as the green-eyed teen was still thrusting inside Ophis's peach hole. After a full minute, Rainier stopped kissing the young man before backing away to catch her breath while Harry was still thrusting inside Ophis's peach. The infinite dragon had her mouth wide open, her tongue pulled out, as her eyes were filled with nothing but joy. It was the first time she had SEC and she was enjoying this a lot. "Ophis, you're so tight." "That's because I was saving my peach virginity for my mate." Rainier, at this point, was a bit jealous as Ophis was having all the fun while she just had the chance to kiss him and savoring his massive pages. Filled with longing, the fallen angel reapproached the duo with a grin before placing herself behind Harry to snuggle with him with his head right between her melons. Blushing at how soft they were, Harry however did nothing to pull himself out as he used one of his hand to lower the right NPL to his mouth, eating it. But then he stopped in his movements when he felt that he was about to leak again, which was noticed by the two women present. "Why did you stop?" Ophis asked him with a growl of displeasure as she was having fun. I'm about to," Harry began to say, and realizing what he was saying, the infinite dragon instantly engulfed his pee-pee inside her mouth, and because of her size, the massive pee-pee went deep inside her mouth, not enough to reach her stomach but deeper than Rainier. A of delight escaped Ophis when she felt a warm liquid pouring down her throat as Harry ejaculated inside her. Harry sighed deeply as he pulled his pee-pee out of Ophis's mouth while the infinite dragon was licking her lips, clearly liking the taste of juices, her mate's juices. The green-eyed teen wanted to relax when he felt something touching his pee-pee again and turned his head to the right to see it was Rainier, who had a look of pure lust on her face. "Now it's my turn." As the fallen angel cooed those words, Harry felt a shiver going through his body, a shiver that caused his pee-pee to went hard again. Ophis smirked as she knew what was going to happen but stepped out of the bed to let the two have their fun. Licking her lips, Rainier then placed herself in front of Harry before spreading her legs, showing him her womanhood again. "My pee-pee wants some attention." Harry's green eyes were locked on Rainier's womanhood and didn't need it to be told twice, and lowered his PP to make it stand right at the PP's entrance. However, the moment he was about to enter inside, Ophis's voice caught their attention. "Don't you dare leak in her. If someone has to receive your leak first, it would be me." Harry nodded at the infinite dragon before looking back at Rainier, who looked both excited and nervous. Maybe because it was her first time. "Ready?" "Yes." Nodding at the fallen angel, Harry looked back at Rainier's womanhood before slowly pushing his throbbing PP inside. As it went deeper and deeper, the fallen angel couldn't stop and he cuffed her hands to the side before kissing her fiercely with his tongue entering her mouth. Ophis watched with a grin as the two of them kissed each other, with the former the latter. Smirking, she approached the duo before taking a hold on the squishy bub and doing one of Rainier's tips. "Yes. It feels so good. Please. Don't stop. This is incredible, Rainier. You're so tight." Harry thrusted faster inside her, and the fallen angel crossed her legs on his back while kissing Ophis on the lips, who wasn't complaining about it and instead seemed to enjoy the attention. For a few minutes they stayed like this, but then Harry hastily pulled his PP out of Rainier's PP. "It's leaking." Hearing this, the two women lowered their heads in front of his throbbing PP with their mouths wide open, eager to take his warm juices. When he felt it was about to explode, Harry lowered his PP in front of Ophis's mouth first and gasped loudly when juice shot out of his urethra before landing inside the infinite dragon's mouth. Then he lowered his PP in front of Rainier's face just as another ray of juices shot of it to land inside her mouth. Satisfied, the two women eagerly ate the teen's juices while Harry fell back on the bed, quickly followed by Rainier and Ophis. The trio laid on the massive bed, panting in exhaustion, even if Ophis and Rainier slowly pressed themselves against Harry as the two laid at both sides of him, cuddling him. As he weakly wrapped the two women with his arms, Harry couldn't help but thinking about how lucky he was to have two gorgeous girls at his side. "That was amazing," Harry said as he stared at the two women beside him. "It was more enjoyable than I thought," Ophis commented back as she putted her head on his chest in content. "It was," Rainier added as she cuddled his left arm between her melons. "Now maybe we should rest for a bit, don't you agree?" Harry asked them as he used a bit of magic to cover the three of them with fresh clothes. "Agree," the two women said at the same time before slowly falling asleep on him. Smiling tenderly at the two, Harry putted his head back on the puddle before slowly drifting into slumber with two appealing girls laying against him. Time skip. Harry sighed as he enjoyed a cup of tea freshly prepared by Fanny as he sat near Rainier, who was herself drinking. Ophis had left the mansion a few minutes ago and had greatly enjoyed their personal moment and even requested to do this again, but maybe with more people. The request was so blunt that Harry had gaped at her in surprise, and even Rainier was taken aback by this, but her surprise didn't stay there long because internally she wouldn't mind at all. Harry was still a bit conflicted of this idea of having a HRM of his own, even if a part of him was kinda overexcited. The other part, the gentleman one, didn't want it a HRM as it would seem as an act of perverseness similar to Issei's or the rest of the perv trio. He mentally cursed Muerte for not telling him about this, and he wanted so badly to scream at her for hiding such informations from him. In human society, harems were not common, so it was a shock to hear that it was the contrary in the supernatural world. Rainier, for her part, was from time to time glancing at the green-eyed teen sitting not too far from her with a grin. The fallen angel had never thought she would fall in love with someone, but here she was, staring lovingly at a handsome young man who was strong enough to be recognized by a dragon god and, as a bonus, was rich. She always thought that men were only interested in women's bodies, and Issei had proven to be a perfect example for that, but Harry showed her that it wasn't the case, that some men loved women for who they were. In addition, he had given her nothing but a home to live in, food, and yes, love. She would always be grateful for what he did for her. However, both her thought were interrupted by bright red summoning circle appearing in front of them, where the entire members of the Occult Research Club stepped out of it. "Welcome. So how was your try dash?" Harry began to ask when he saw something that caused him to blush madly. The girls of the group had their clothes torn and he could see their assets and a bit of their melons. Issei, for his part, seemed saddened by something even if he was still glancing at the girls lecherously. But then he flinched when Harry sent him a glare before looking at the others while making sure to not glance at their personal parts. What happened? We don't want to talk about it, Rias responded with a blush. It was Issei's fault, Kaneko grumbled under her breath, but he heard her. Harry's eyes narrowed as he shot a small glare at Issei before waving a hand in front of the group. The girls, all gasped when their clothes went back to normal as if nothing happened. Issei, however, looked disappointed, but he didn't dare to voice his mind because Harry would surely prank him again. Thank you, Otoko. Kaneko inquired to the green-eyed boy as she hugged his waist. Anything for my friends and family. This comments earned him soft smiles from everyone, even Rainier, who didn't dare to closer at the glare she received from some of the devils. Harry then blinked when he saw Asia standing right in front of him with shining eyes. DMN, how could a girl be so adorable? Look, Oni-san. I have a familiar. Asia almost shouted as she presented him a small dragon-like creature with blue diamond scales in her hands. Isn't he cute? He is. What is his name? Harry inquired the blonde nun or former nun with a smile as he stared at the little dragon who was looking at him almost inquisitively. It's Rasse. Harry stared at her with an amused raised brow. You named him after Issei, didn't you? Asia blushed madly at hearing this but didn't deny it. Chuckling to himself, Harry extended an arm to pet the little dragon, who sniffed his hand before pressing his head against it, purring. The devils looked at this with shock, and Harry, noticing this, looked up at them with a confused from while still petting the blue dragon. What? It is a sprite dragon. And? What's your point? He shouldn't be reacting like this to any males. Rias's words caused him to stare at her with a blank look, momentarily stopping his petting, which caused Rasse to look at him with a hint of annoyance before nipping on his hand. All right, little rascal, here more petting. Harry inquired with amused as he petted the dragon, who strangely looked content. Asia was watching the interaction with stars in her eyes, while the others present were still a bit shocked by the reaction, but then Kaneko froze as she smelled the air. Dragon. The devils looked at the petite white-haired girl with confusion, while Rainier and Harry exchanged a look of worry. Kaneko-chan, of course you smell a dragon, there is one here. Akeno inquired with amusement as she pointed at Rasse, who was now cuddling Asia. Not Rasse, another one much powerful. A wave of shock went through the devils while Harry looked more and more nervous. Is it still here? Issei asked the Nikomata with worry. Thankfully, Kaneko shook her head, which caused some of them to release their breaths in relief before freezing again in shock when the white-haired girl added in her usual emotionless voice. It left recently. Harry froze again and mentally cursed himself for forgetting about Kaneko's sharp senses, while Rainier was thinking about either leaving her boyfriend alone or helping him. The green-eyed boy then saw everyone staring at him with narrowed eyes except Asia, who seemed curious. Harry, what are you hiding from us? Rias asked him with a stern face. Harry opened his mouth to deny this accusation even if it was true when he saw Asia's eyes. They were so curious and full of innocence. He would feel bad if. He lied in front of her and sighed deeply. All right, my girlfriend came to visit me after you left. He thought this answer would be enough for them, but he was wrong, especially when Akeno's eyes narrowed at him, but not in anger but jealousy. Is your girlfriend a dragon? Because it would make sense if Kaneko-chan can smell her. Harry bit his lips, unsure how to respond as they all gazed at him expectantly. He shot a look at Rainier, who only grinned at him before drinking her tea, completely ignoring him. Staring at her with a blank expression on his face, the green-eyed teen then looked back at the devils, who still waited for an answer. My girlfriend is indeed a dragon, but not only. What do you mean? Rias asked him with a curious raised brow while crossing her arms under her large busts. Harry opened his mouth to answer when Rainier beat him to it by stating nonchalantly. His girlfriend is none other than Ophis, the infinite dragon. At this revelation, every devil stared at Harry with shock and disbelief, well except Asia, who was confused. At the same time, the green-eyed young lord was glaring at Rainier, who was trying her best to look innocent. Great, just great. Muerte was already bad enough for doing such things, and now he had another one in the form of his second girlfriend. DxD Rainier. You really have to say it like that? Oh. And what will you do about it then? Punish me? I absolutely loved your little performance earlier, the fallen angel shot back calmly as she licked her lips seductively. Harry blushed madly as she secretly revealed their SXL session with Ophis 2 hours ago and hoped that none of the devils caught on. Unfortunately for him, Rias and Akeno did caught what Rainier was insinuating, and both had different reaction. While the former was shocked, the latter was angry and saddened that she wasn't the one to enjoy Harry's body. Kaneko and Kiba were calm about it, even if the Nikomata was eyeing the fallen angel with narrowed eyes. I hate you, Rainier. The fallen angel smirked mischievously at Harry for those words before walking out of the room, but not before winking at him seductively, much to his embarrassment and annoyance. I swear I must be cursed, Harry groaned as he rubbed his forehead as a headache was slowly forming. He raised his head to look at the assistants, only to flinch at the glares he was receiving from the devils. Less Asia, the scariest one was from Akeno. Harry-kun, when have you planned to tell us that your girlfriend is none other than the infinite dragon god? The redhead's question caused him to chuckle nervously as he rubbed the back of his head sheepishly. I didn't know how you would react. DxD man. Not only are you rich and powerful, but you also have a phoenix familiar and a literal dragon god as your girlfriend. Life is so unfair. Issei's whines caused Harry to stare at him with a deadpan expression as a sweat drop fell down his forehead. But then he saw Akeno's eyes and shivered as the jealousy emanating from them. For my defense, Besaki chose me as her mate. For more detail ask Muerte, she was there. Oh, but we will. Harry-kun fufufu. Akeno's sadistic grin and answer frightened him even more now. Why do I feel doomed right now? Akeno smirked at him darkly and he gulped nervously. Darn, this woman sure was scary. But then he blinked when he saw Kaneko sniffing him and paled at the words coming out of her mouth. You have the smell of dragon and fallen angel on you. Harry wanted to stop her, but in vain, as when those words reached Akeno's ears, she looked angrier as lightnings were seen forming in her hands. Issei, Kiba, and Rias all stared at Harry with shock because they knew what Kaneko was implying, while Asia, being incarnate purity, was titling her head to the side confused. Huh. Sorry guys, I heard someone calling for me. I will see you lat dash. Era, you are not anywhere, Harry-kun, Akeno inquired sweetly as she caught him by the arm before he had the chance to reach the room's front door. Panicking, Harry sent a frightened look at Rias and the others, who only grinned evilly at him. All of them? No. The moment she saw his face, Asia approached him with a concerned look on her face. What are you going to do to Oniai-san, Akeno-senpai? The raven-haired beauty shot the bishop a sweet smile, which scared Harry even more before answering in the same tone. Oh, I'm just gonna punish him for a bit. He had fun without inviting me. It's a crime in my opinion. Hearing this, Harry's face paled even more. Akeno. Can you please let me go? Era, why should I do that, Harry-kun? I will do anything. Anything? Well then. Without giving the chance to reply, Akeno fiercely pulled him a kiss, much to everyone's shock except Rias. The redhead had known for a while that her queen was interested in Harry, so it wasn't surprising to see her like this. Issei, for his part, was glaring daggers at Harry, internally complaining about how life was unfair, while Asia looked away with a blush. Kaneko showed no reaction as she was nipping on a candy she picked up from who knows where, while Kiba was staring at the scene with a soft smile, even if internally he was amused by how shocked Harry seemed to look at the moment. Indeed, the raven-haired teen was frozen in place, unable to say something as he was being kissed by Akeno, one of the two great ladies of Koho Academy and a SDSM rivaling Muertes. When she pulled herself from him, he was still paralyzed with an agape look on his face, which caused Akeno to giggle before lowering her head to whisper in his ear. I'm looking forward for our next kiss, Harry-kun. Then Akeno returned to Rias, who laughed loudly when Harry still didn't react, even when the kiss ended a few seconds ago. Kiba himself was amused by it but tried to not show it too much, while Kaneko was still busy enjoying her sweets. Oni-san, are you okay? Asia's concerned question caused Harry to break out of his trance as he shook his head to regain his composure almost. With a face as red as a tomato, he turned around to look at Asia, who was looking back at him concernedly. I'm fine. Sure you are after being kissed like that? Rias inquired with a grin before giggling when Harry shot her a glare. Akeno, who was standing right at the left side of the redhead, winked at Harry, who blushed again before freezing when a familiar voice echoed from the door. Are you adding a new girl in your HRM, Harry-kun? Harry glared at the front doors where stood a smirking Rainier and was about to retort when Issei said what he had his mind. DMNU Harry. You aren't supposed to get a HRM before MOW. The brown-haired boy groaned in pain as Kaneko punched his stomach hard. As the perv fell on the floor, Harry stared at the petite white-haired girl with a smile before summoning a large bag of sweets. Thank you, Kaneko-chan. Here a little something for you for taking care of the prat. Arigato itoko. Kaneko instantly replied as she swiftly took the bag of sweets from his hand before starting to munch on some. You know what, Rainier? I wouldn't mind a piece of hard dash. Don't corrupt Asia, Akeno. Harry yelled as he used his hands to cover Asia's ears as his face reddened again. A chorus of laugh echoed in the room as Asia stared at her Oni-san with confusion. Rainier and Akeno were laughing loudly with humor at the face Harry was giving them, and Rias herself was laughing at the amusing scene taking place right in front of her. Kiba, to prevent himself for laughing, coughed in his fist while Kaneko was too busy munching on some sweets to care. Harry watched the people surrounding him before looking at the smirking faces of Akeno and Rainier. He stared at them with a deadpan expression mixed with annoyance as inside his head, he was thinking almost with despair. I'm doomed. Time skip. I swear one day they would make me mad. I hope it's important or I will skin them. Harry commented to himself with a growl as he walked toward the Occult Research Club's clubroom. He was doing some homeworks in the school's library when Issei sent him a message, a really strange one, come to the club quick. It sounded urgent, so he quickly finished his work to go to the clubroom. At first he walked quickly, but then he remembered that Akeno had a crush on him. While he was honored to have such a gorgeous young woman around him, Harry was wondering how many girls would join this HRM at this rate. Issei, as predicted, wasn't happy about him having a HRM before him, but a punch from Kaneko and a prank from him quickly shut him up. Speaking of Issei, Harry had noticed something strange in class that day. The brown-haired boy looked pensive and worried about something, but he dismissed those thoughts away but when he received Akeno's message. Shaking his head to get rid of his panic, he walked toward the clubroom when he felt many presences inside and narrowed his eyes as he didn't recognize any of the signatures. Politely, he knocked on the door and waited for an answer. Slowly, it opened to reveal Kiba, who blinked when he saw who was in front of him. Hey Harry-kun. I regret you might backlat dash. Nonsense. Let him, Kiba-kun. Rias's voice echoed from the inside. The knight nodded his head to his king before stepping aside to let the black-haired teen enter the clubroom. Nodding in respect, Harry entered inside and was greeted by a strange sight. There were a lot of people present, most of them being unknown to him. There was a man who looked to be in his 20s with blonde hair and an arrogant aura around him. At his side was a voluptuous woman with long, wavy purple hair that falls all the way down her back and matching eyes. There were also 13 more girls present here, standing not too far from the blonde man and the purple woman. Then there was also a argent-haired woman who looked like a maid whose body emanated a powerful aura. At the other side of the room were his friends and the members of the Occult Research Club. Am I interrupting something? Because if I am, I can still leave, Harry inquired as he glanced at the newcomers warily. My dear Rias, can you tell me who is this? The blonde man asked the Grimoire heiress with a sneer. Harry-kun meets Riser Phoenix, a high-class devil and a member of the Phoenix clan, Rias began to say with nothing but disdain clear in her voice before adding with a grin, Riser meets Lord Harry Peverell Gryffindor Ravenclaw Slytherin Emery's Lefay from England and a close friend of mine. The man whose name was apparently Riser, looked at Harry with narrowed eyes, especially after his full title was pronounced. Behind him, the girls who might be his peerage were whispering with each other. This human a lord? Harry completely ignored the disdain and disgust at the word human as he looked at Riser dead in the eyes. Yes, I am, or you have a problem with that, Mr. Phoenix? The green-eyed teen replied back coldly but still politely. A grin appeared on Riser's face, an amused one, but he said nothing and instead watched as Harry walked away from him to come stand with Issei, who had waved at him a moment ago. Harry. I'm glad you came. This prick just told us he was engaged with Ria-senpai. But apparently she doesn't want to marry him. Hearing this, the green-eyed boy narrowed his eyes at the blonde man who was looking at the redhead. He was the fiancé. Now everything made sense. Ever since he met Rias, he had noticed how distressed she looked when she thought no one was looking, and now he got his answer. The Gremory heiress was engaged to a man she felt no love for. However, he didn't have time to think more because Riser's annoying voice caught his attention and it sounded angry. How dare you speak while Riser is speaking, low lives? Lee, teach those mongrels what happens when you interrupt Riser. At those words left the man's mouth, two girls with cat ears but with different hair colors charged Issei and Harry. But before they could even touch the guys, they all felt it, pressure. All members of the Occult Research Club tensed when they felt it and glanced at where it came from, Harry. His eyes were now glowing with power as his body was nothing more than a mere shadowy figure. Everyone present found themselves on their knees except the maid woman who was fighting against whatever was pressuring her. Give me one good reason to not kill you or your peerage, Riser. Rias and her peerage all flinched when they heard the growl-like voice coming out of Harry's mouth as they stared at the scene with fright except Akeno, who was enjoying the pressure immensely. The two cat-eared girls stood there with nothing but terror in their eyes as they stared up at him, and the same could be said from the rest of Riser's peerage. The maid woman, while shocked by what happening, was staring at the young man with a hint of respect in her eyes, and lastly Riser, well, he was everything but scared. Stop this, your BSTRD. Make me burning turkey. Riser growled in fury at the nickname as he glared at Harry with a look of murder in his eyes, while the members of the Occult Research Club snickered in amusement. Even the maid woman allowed a faint smile on her face. Harry was about to release more of his pressure when the maid woman's voice stopped him. Enough, both of you. Lord Peveril, please release us. Why should I? And who are you anyway? My name's Graphia Lucifuge, wife of Lord Lucifer. Harry blinked in surprise at this answer. Rias had told him that the current Lucifer, her own brother, had a wife, but he never met her or the guy in question, and now he had the chance, well, half of it. He had to admit she was appealing and silently cursed Lucifer for being such a lucky BSTRD. Very well, but if he attacks me again, I kill him. As he said this, Harry's pressure disappeared, allowing everyone to move again. Lee and Ni both ran back toward the rest of Riser's peerage while their king was glaring daggers at the black-haired teen, who returned the glare with one of his own. The blonde man growled at being looked like this when Graphia sternly stepped in. Enough, Riser. This kind of behavior won't be tolerated here. Riser clenched his fire-covered fists as he glared daggers at Harry, who didn't back down as he crossed his arms, silently daring the man to attack him. The blonde, however, walked back to his peerage. When it's you, the mightiest queen, saying that, even I am scared, Riser said to Graphia respectfully before glaring back at Harry, who shot him an amused grin. It was predicted this might happen. As such, I have been charged to carry out last resort measures if no agreement is reached, Graphia said calmly despite the tensions. Last resort? What do you mean, Graphia? Rias asked the maid woman almost in a hopeful way, as if she knew what was going to come next. If you insist on your position, you're welcome to settle the issue with Razor-sama through a rating game. Harry frowned and he didn't know what a rating game was, but seeing the triumph in Riser's eyes, he knew that it wasn't something good for Rias. What is a rating game? Harry asked the closest to him, who happened to be Kiba. It's a game that resembles chess where high-class devils fight using their servants, the blonde knight explained before Akeno took over. That is why our powers are likened to chess pieces. Why we're called evil pieces. Harry's eyes narrowed again at those words and they twitched when Riser's voice inquired arrogantly, "I've played the game many times and won many times as well. You're not even an officially qualified player, let alone have any experience. But I accept." Hearing this, Harry looked at Rias with worry. If what Riser said was true, then the redhead was severely disadvantaged. Growling, the black-haired boy stepped forward, catching Riser's attention. "You are truly the lowest sum I ever met. You only accepted because you knew you would win. Stay out of this lowlife. It's not business of yours. It is my business the moment you decide to oppose my family." As he said this, Harry's eyes turned more feral while claws appeared at the tip of his fingers while sharp fangs grew in his mouth. Riser, outraged and angry, approached the teen and both of them were facing each other, trying to threaten the other as best as they could. Riser's hands were in fire while shadows started to envelop Harry's, whose emerald eyes glowed again defiantly. "Do you think you are better than Riser, you punk?" "No, I don't think I'm better than you, I know I am. Rias is one of my closest friend and she deserved better than to serve a pathetic piece of scum like you." Rias smiled in appreciation at what she was hearing and the rest of her peerage seemed just as happy. While the redhead wasn't interested in Harry as a lover/boyfriend, she loved him as a good friend. "If you, devils, resolves your problems with fighting, then let's fight." Riser gritted his teeth with anger as his fists clenched more. His face was becoming redder and redder with nothing but fury all directed at the guy who had the nerve of opposing him. Harry internally smirked as he noticed that it won't take long before this turkey blew up, so he decided to do the final blow. "So what is it going to be, burning turkey? Do you accept my challenge? Your peerage against Rias while I fight you? Or are you a coward who will hide in your mother's skirts?" Everyone was looking at Harry as if he was mad while Riser was now red in furor. It was the last straw. "I will show you who's the best. I accept your challenge, punk." "Calm down, Phoenix, or you will hurt yourself," Harry replied with a fake tone of concern which caused the members of the Occult Research Club to laugh loudly with humor while Riser's peerage were glaring daggers at the green-eyed teen, not at all amused by this comment. Gryffindor sighed deeply as she stood where she was, but her eyes were more focused on Lord Peveril. Sure, he was young, but he was much more powerful than he let on. Even her husband, when he was serious, never released such power. Internally, she hoped that Riser lost because she could never stand him and his enormous ego. She watched as Riser and his peerage left the room through a portal with the youngest male Phoenix shot a glare at Lord Peveril, who didn't seem fazed by it as he shot him a defiant one in response. Once the group left, Gryffindor looked at the remaining people still there. "The rating game will take place in 10 days. I suggest you to be ready as soon as possible." Rias nodded at the maid woman before they all watched as she disappeared through a magic circle, leaving behind a silent group. Harry sighed when Gryffindor left, but then he felt someone hugging him and looked down to see it was none other than Rias. "Thank you, Harry-kun, for both defending me and well challenging him. It was my pleasure, but now we have to get ready. 10 days is not a lot to train." "Yes, but we don't have a choice." "I know, but even if you train not stop, I don't think it would be enough to bet the frying turkey." "But where are we going to train? We cannot do that at school." Issei inquired as he stepped into conversation. Harry was about to nod in agreement when an idea entered his mind, a risky one to his opinion, but could work. "Guys, I might know someone who can train all of you." They all perked up when Harry said those words and everyone stared at him with curiosity, even Kaneko. "Who, Harry-kun?" Kiba asked the green-eyed teen with a raised brow. "A certain pink-haired woman you met once." Everyone present flinched at who he was referring and looked at each other worriedly. "Are you sure she will train us?" Issei inquired shakily as he remembered how scary Muerte was in her other form. "She will if I ask her, but fair warning, she is a SDST far worse than Akeno." "Moo, that's so mean, Harry-kun." Akeno pouted at those words until she saw that everyone were in agreement about her being a SDST, which caused her pout to deepen. Rias sighed deeply as she went deep in thought. She had planned to take her peerage somewhere away from Kuo to train, but if Muerte, a primordial deity and Death herself, could train them, they might be able to beat Riser and his peerage. Alright then, we don't have much of a choice anyway. Harry nodded at her before looking at everyone present. Well then, see you tonight at my place. If you wanna stay, I have a lot of rooms. All devils of the Occult Research Club all nodded in understanding as they looked at each other with determination. Then Rias clapped her hands with satisfaction. Finally. I will have my whole peerage with me. Harry looked at her with amusement before leaving the clubroom with a grin on his face. If only they knew what they were about to endure. He was already praying for them at the reminder of how sadistic Muerte could be. Time skip. Harry was waking his way back to the mansion, exhausted by classes. Kuo Academy, being prestigious school, had a high exigencies in regard of work, so it was really tiring if you aren't someone studious. He was approaching the park where Issei was almost killed by Rainier long ago when he heard someone calling out for him along with many footsteps. Harry weighed up. Turning his head to see who it was, Harry wasn't surprised to see it was Rias and her peerage. The green-eyed teen waited for them as the group stopped right in front of him. The second Akeno reached him, she instantly pulled Harry into a tight embrace with her lips against his in a deep kiss. At first taken aback, he soon returned it, ignoring the glare he was receiving from Issei. I'm sure you aren't here to have a civil conversation with little old me, right everyone? Harry asked them with a grin once he and Akeno stopped kissing. The devils all rolled their eyes in amusement and Kaneko punched his arm with a small comment, idiot. As much as I would love to have another of our usual conversation with you, Harry-kun, we have more important things to do, Rias replied with seriousness. Sadly, because between Issei's perverseness, Akeno's stuck-in attempt, Kaneko's silentness, Rainier being herself and Kiba's seriousness, I don't have many people left to have a serious talk. Oi! The concerned people all shouted in denial and Kaneko punched him harder on the arm while Rias laughed loudly. Era that was mean, Harry-kun, I love it. Akeno inquired as she hugged him again with his arm between her large melons. Harry stared at her with a blank look on his face before slapping himself. He had momentarily forgotten that Akeno was SDMSCS. Akeno, can you please let me go so we can head to my home? He asked the raven-haired beauty. Nope. Rias, a little help here, the green-eyed teen asked the redhead almost pleadingly. You are on your own, Harry-kun, was her response as she grinned at him. Kaneko? Kiba? Issei? Harry asked the others, who either shook their heads or ignored him. I hate you all. A chorus of laughs echoed after those words left Harry's mouth and he grumbled in annoyance before being hugged by a worried Asia. Oh, Asia, keep being pure and innocent. Stop teasing Oni-san, the blonde nun inquired the group with a cute pout, and the laughs doubled. Harry pat Asia's head with his free hand before glaring daggers at the other devils. But then a grin appeared on his face as an idea came into his mind. Well then guys, if you want to play like this, Mickey. MSTR, Harry called Mickey, the male house elf asked as he appeared with a pop. Yes, can you take me and Asia back to the mansion? Mickey nodded his head and was about to do what he was told when Rias's voice stopped him. Hey! What about us? You go on foot, Harry responded sweetly before he, the house elf and Asia operate away, leaving behind a frustrated group. Is it me or he just ditched us? Issei asked with annoyance as he glanced at the rest of the group. He did. Kaneko was not happy at all and right now wanted to find her a Toko to skin him alive for what he did. Rias was also frustrated by what just happened, but then she noticed something hilarious. She laughed loudly with amusement and everyone else turned their heads to stare at him. Bucho, what are you laughing at? And when did you get your hair green? Kiba asked his king with wide eyes at the last part. Rias froze when she heard the last part and approached the fountain to stare at her hair, which were indeed green. She screamed in stupor and anger and her peerage all froze at the sound. Kiba, your skin is yellow. Issei remarked as he looked at the blonde guy who blinked before looking at his hands and freezing in shock. Akeno-senpai, your hair are white. Rias's queen blinked in stupor before approaching the fountain, the same one that Rias looked at and looking at her reflection. To her shock, her hair, which were black were now snow white. Lightings appeared as she clenched her fists in anger, but then Kaneko looked at Issei before pointing at his hair. Pink. Issei, hearing this, froze as he rushed toward the fountain to stare at his reflection before screaming in anger and annoyance. Not again. What happened to us? Kiba asked the others with shock, as the only one still normal was Kaneko for some reasons. I don't know. We weren't like that until Harry-kun left. Rias began to say before stopping dead in her sentence. The redhead's eyes narrowed in anger as her face turned as red as tomatoes, and soon her expression was joined by Kiba, Akeno, and Issei, while Kaneko stayed silent as she knew who did this. Hey, At the same time, in Peveril Mansion, Harry was smirking mischievously as he and Asia were waiting for dinner to be served by the house elves. With them was none other than Rainier, who had just been told about what the young lord did to Rias and the rest of her peerage. That was mean, Oniai-san. Asia inquired to her older brother figure with her cute angry expression. A little prank had never killed someone, Harry replied back, still smirking, and Rainier nodded in agreement. The green-eyed young lord then saw Asia's cute puppy eyes and knew that he couldn't say no to her, so with a sigh he opened his mouth to call loudly. Mickey. MSTR. Harry called for Mickey, the house elf inquired as he appeared near his MSTR's chair. Yes, sorry to interrupt you in your cooking, but can you bring the rest of my friends? The ones you saw earlier? Mickey nodded at him before disappearing with a pop. Asia smiled brightly before hugging Harry, who chuckled to himself as he patted her head. Asia was too cute for her own good. Rainier was also smiling at the scene, even if deep down she was amused by how easily Asia could handle Harry, someone who could be terrifying when angered. She had him completely wrapped in her fingers thanks to her purity and kind nature. Harry then smirked when Mickey came back with Rias and her peerage, who, once they saw him, sent him dangerous glares. Rainier, seeing them, laughed loudly at how hilarious they looked right now, especially with the little additions Harry-kun putted on them. Asia herself couldn't refrain from giggling as the sight before her was too much to handle. Rias and those who had been pranked seemed to become more embarrassed and angry when the two laughed at them and glared even more at Harry, who smirked at them triumphantly. You know, Akeno, you do look good with white hair. Are you sure you don't want to stay like this? While I appreciated your compliment, I prefer my normal hair, so if you don't change them right now, I will take you to the nearest room and punish you hard. Hearing this, Harry paled, especially at the devilish glint he saw shining in her eyes, and with a wave of his hands, the pranked devils went back to normal. However, Kaneko was still angry for her Atoko for leaving her behind, but before she could say anything, Harry spoke again. Kaneko-chan, I'm sorry for leaving you behind like that, but you deserved it. The petite white-haired girl growled in anger, but before she could retort, Harry added quickly. And I'm ready to give you anything you want to gain forgiveness for my favorite Atoko. Kaneko blinked in surprise when she heard Harry calling her Atoko, as usually he called her Kaneko-chan or Kitty, and a smile appeared on her face as she approached him before sitting on his laps while looking at him expectantly. Head pats. Harry laughed softly at this simple request and happily used his left hand to pat her head. Kaneko closed her eyes in content as she pushed her head against his head to enjoy it even more. Then Harry turned away from Kaneko to look at a certain brown-haired teen. So Issei, won't your parents be worried with you being away for 10 days? Nah. They are fine with that. I told them who you are and they completely agreed. Issei began to say in a cheerful tone before it turned into an annoyed one, they hoped you will teach me not to be a perv. Harry smirked at him toothily and Issei shot him a glare in response. Looking away from the brunette boy, Harry's eyes then landed on the rest of the devils. Now how about we all sit down like civilized people and wait until the house elves bring dinner? They all nodded in response before slowly approaching the different chairs. Issei chose one near Asia, who instantly pulled him into a hug much to Rias's displeasure, while Kiba chose one at the other side of the table but still close enough to the rest of the peerage. Akeno chose to sit right next to Rias, who was sitting a chair away from Rainier. It was easy to guess why. Rainier had tried to kill Issei after all. Speaking of Akeno, she was looking at Harry with a familiar glint in her eyes, and the green-eyed young lord wanted nothing more than to hide somewhere when Rainier shot him the same look mixed with amusement. Then a growl caught everyone's attention and all turned their heads to look at Issei, who was holding his stomach with a face red of embarrassment. "Don't worry mate, I'm sure dinner is on the way," Harry inquired to the brunette boy with amusement, earning a glare from the guy while everyone laughed in amusement at the duo's antic. Then the table found itself filled with a mountain of different dishes. Rias's eyes brightened in hunger as her eyes landed on them, and Harry could see drool coming out of her mouth in mass. The same could be said for many others, Issei, Kaneko, Akeno, and Rainier particularly. Kiba, being the serious guy he was, said nothing, but his eyes shined at the sight of food. Suddenly, before anything could happen, appeared two other people, one in a burst of white flames and the later in a portal made of shadows. Hedwig. Aunt Moo. Indeed it was. The white royal phoenix flied above the group before landing on Asia's chairback, much to her joy, singing loudly. Unlike last time, the devils felt no pain in at the song and were wondering why before they remembered that they were friends with this noble bird's MSTR. Asia cooed at the phoenix before offering her a piece of beacon, totally ignoring Harry. Speaking of Harry, he was glaring at his familiar with annoyance, but then he turned away to look at Muerte, who was now sitting among them while shooting him a warm smile. "Hello Harry, sorry for not coming sooner, but I have been really busy lately." "You were watching Sailor Moon again, didn't you?" Muerte shot him a glare while her face was as red as Rias's hair. Everyone else tried their best to not laugh at what they were hearing and seeing. Rias, being a Japanophile, loved anime and manga of any kind, and Sailor was one of them. So to know that Death herself watched it was a surprise. A welcoming one. While I would have loved if it was the case, no, a lot of people died recently and I had to send their souls to the other side. Harry, seeing how serious she looked, nodded in understanding, as leading souls to the afterlife sounded anything but easy. "Harry-kun," Rias called out with a look in her eyes, and Harry instantly knew what she wanted. "Aunt Moo, I have a favor to ask you." I wanted to ask you if you could well train Rias and the others." Muerte blinked at the unexpected request, but then narrowed her eyes as she looked at her MSTR and honorable nephew in all but BLD, "And pray tell why I should do that." Harry was searching in his mind the best way to explain the situation when Rias took over. "My parents engaged me with the third son of the Phoenix clan, Riser, but I don't want to. He is arrogant, haughty, and despotic. I want to be free and marry with the man I want to love. But the only way for me to broke this contract is by a rating game." Muerte listened with a calm expression on her face, even if Harry saw some pity in her blue eyes, and he could understand the feeling. No one deserved to be forced against their wills. But then he froze when Rias revealed something that he would have preferred to hide. "Earlier today, Riser came to Koa Academy to make advances to me. Harry defended me from him and even challenged Riser in a fight." "Oh really, he did?" Muerte asked as she eyed Harry with a glare. The green-eyed young lord gulped in fright. He might be powerful enough to hold his ground against Ophis, but his honorable aunt was scary sometimes. "Riser accepted the challenge. We have 10 days to train. After this delay, my peerage and Harry will oppose Riser and his peerage." Rias finished calmly in an attempt to make the primordial deity look away from Harry, which did. Muerte closed her eyes, deep in thought, while around her everyone stayed silent, silently hoping that she would help them. Hedwig, who was still perched on Asia's chair back, looked at Rias with her amber eyes with a look similar to pity. Then she opened her beak to let out a soothing song, and the Gremory heiress smiled as she listened to it along with the others present. Nekashu. Muerte's call caused Kaneko to flinch in fright as her yellow eyes landed on the primordial deity, whose eyes were still closed. "Can you punch Harry for me?" Harry barely had time to comprehend what he heard that Kaneko punched him in the gut. "Ow! What was that for?" "For being an idiot. Why can't you stay behind and let others solve their problems?" "Because it is the right thing to do." At those words, Muerte reopened her eyes to look at Harry with a proud look on her face. "You are definitely Ignatius's descendant. All right, I will train you." Hearing, all devils looked at each other with joy, and Rias herself couldn't stop tears to fall from her eyes as it seemed hope was rising in her heart. I will begin your training tomorrow morning. My reapers can take care of the souls in my absences. Another wave of joy spread through the devils while Harry sighed in relief. He was afraid that his honorable aunt would refuse to help them, but now, he realized that he was scared of nothing almost. Now let's just enjoy dinner. Because tomorrow the training begin. Harry inquired to his guests, who all stared at him with determination except Muerte, who shot him a dark and sadistic grin. Seeing it, Harry flinched with fright and prayed for the devils around him, as they will realize that Muerte was a sadistic monster during their lessons. After that, dinner went pretty good and some devils were complimenting the food, and Akeno herself couldn't deny that it was good while being interested in the various dishes she tasted. An hour later, there was nothing left on the table and everyone were holding their bellies with content. "Aw man, I never ate so good before," Issei inquired as he looked at his friends and fellow devils. Everyone responded in the affirmative, even Hedwig, who had been spoiled rotten by Asia, who gave her a lot of bacons. "We should go to bed now, we will need all our strength tomorrow," Harry inquired calmly as he went back on his feet, quickly followed by his guests. Leaving the house elves cleaning the table, Harry led the devils toward their different rooms, and Issei had been shocked by how big they were, especially the beds, but he wasn't complaining. As everyone bid each other good nights, the brunette boy inquired cheerfully, "I can't wait for tomorrow. I'm sure this training will be fun." Harry, hearing this, smirked devilishly as he entered his own room, thinking to himself, "Oh yes, it will be fun, but not for you." The next day. "It's not fun at all." Issei screamed as he ran away to escape a large chimera who roared in pleasure as it chased its prey. Harry and Muerte laughed loudly as the two watched the devils struggling in their little arena. The primordial deity created a void where time went faster than on Earth. Here 10 days will look like 10 months. The pink-haired woman changed the time this morning so the group would be properly formed, and it was at this moment that Rias and her peerage realized how sadistic she was. Of course they had blamed Harry for not warning them of it, and his only response was, "Hey, I warned you. Not my fault you didn't listen." Muerte had summoned the souls of many dead creatures to fight against the devils, from wolves to large trolls. Currently, Kiba was fighting against a werewolf while Kaneko was taking on one of the trolls. Not too far away, Akeno was struggling against a hydra while Rias was trying to use he power to fight against an army of skeletons. Issei, well, you already know. And what of Asia? Well, when she saw how pure the blonde nun was, Muerte decided to be gentle and had asked Harry to teach her some defensive spells for now. At first hesitant, the blonde nun had listened her Oni-san's lesson with attention and successfully managed to perform some protection spell quite well for a first try. "Do you think they will survive down there?" Harry asked his honorable aunt as he munched on some popcorn. "We will see right now, let's just enjoy the show," Muerte inquired to her mstr/nephew with a grin before the two of them looked back at the devils struggling in the arena. Harry would be lying to himself if he said he wasn't feeling sympathy for them, as himself experimented Muerte's sadistic lessons, but she was right about one thing, it was kinda fun to watch them from there. So with a grin of his own, he made himself comfortable as he watched his friends fighting for their lives. So alright folks, that's all for today. Stay tuned for part 5. Do subscribe, like and share for more such videos. Also check out the story and author Asian Lion Heart 310 on fanfiction.net. Press the bell icon to be notified first on release. See you in the next video, till then, goodbye.